Well, hey everyone, welcome to this first long-form episode on the YouTube channel. Obviously, we'll divvy this up if there's any good little segments and put them in some short-form content. On that subject, just got off a call this morning with Jared. Soul of Jared is his Instagram handle if you want to check him out. He's this really cool dude. Kind of reminds me of, I suppose, early days Aubrey Marcus times, but he's very unique. He's his own thing anyway. But some similarities there. He's into his psychedelics. He does some content around that, but he also works as a content creator for other people. I've seen him on podcasts, or actually on his podcast. You've got some relatively famous people like Evan Britton from, most people know him from Mike Tyson's podcast. He's kind of the guy that sort of facilitates it and whatnot. Really cool dude in his own right. He's someone that Jarrett works with, but there's a host of other people. He's got like baseball stars and some musicians that he sort of runs the Instagrams for and whatnot. Anyway, it was just really refreshing, just getting some tips on how to create content and how to really connect with your own voice through the content. So this is kind of an experiment in doing that. Got my little mapacho here. This is a cigar picked up in Japan on our recent trip. Really nice, really light smoke. So most people that know me know that I love cigars. I'm not the only one. There's Jamie Gaella, one of our great sort of work colleagues in a way, I guess. He works with nutrition systems and helps hook us up with some great supplements that they distribute. And good old Dwayne from Apple, back in my Apple days. So I'm not the only one, but I always have really enjoyed cigars from a pretty young age, to be honest. Love that you don't have to inhale and you just you get that buzz. You absorb it through the saliva glands. It's kind of like similar to shisha, which I guess is you are inhaling though. That's essentially vaporizing nicotine with some cool flavors. But anyway, I wanted to jump on here, and as the title to this video probably suggests, and talk about some test-boosting herbs that really changed my life and enhanced my life over the years. And over the years, I really have tried all of them. If anything ever comes out and hits the market that I haven't tried, I'll generally try that pretty quickly, usually as well. When I'm traveling, I try to find out whatever the local herbs are or what the local supplements are and what they've got in them, especially around test boosting, and I'll generally buy them and try them, which is something that I did recently as well. We even went to a Campo medicine man, essentially, which is similar to like Chinese herbalism, or it's based on it, and we got like a handmade test booster with Tomomi's help translating. And I guess over those years I've tried a lot of things. I've seen what they do. I've really tuned into the herbs as well. Often you need to use it for a while, a few different extracts of a given herb, and use it over a pretty lengthy period of time to really understand what it's doing and what it's not doing, because we have our own unique ups and downs. There's definitely not just a flat line of where your hormones are at or where your testosterone's at or your libido's at. It's just not a thing. It's not a thing. I mean, the closest thing to that is, of course, maybe running exogenous tests, but we're not talking about that. It's not something I'm into personally. I mean, I've certainly dabbled in SARMs and other exogenous compounds over the years, the pro-hormone era, but I definitely don't think that was ever really for me. I'd always do it for short periods. You'd have to PCT, there's a big crash, there's a big up and down, and really your hormones are all over the place. It's certainly not the right compounds to run generally for libido anyway, and certainly not for natural testosterone production. They do quite the opposite. They interrupt it. And so I've always been into the herbs primarily. I still remember the first herb I ever took, the first time I sort of really understood that you could get like a test boosting herb, and that of course was none other than tribulus. Good old Tribulus terrestrius. And I've actually worked with that herb for a long time since, and it's still one of my favorites. So that's probably the first one I'll bring up and just discuss really quick. I guess the first thing you got to say about tribulus, if you're bringing up tribulus, is that, I mean, a lot of people know it. I've got one here. This isn't my favorite one. I'm just actually trying this for the first time. This is the Now Foods. It's their Now Sports range. So it's a slightly different packaging. I assume they just tried to develop like a little, sport range, and that kind of is indicative of the fact that they consider tribulus a sports supplement. And that's really just because it's been around a long time. It's an ancient herb. It's in the Ayurvedic tradition, big in Eastern Europe. I think even Siberian sort of herbalism, but it's sort of got a really big surge back in maybe could be late 80s, early 90s, late 90s. I can't be sure, because obviously things hit Australia a little bit later sometimes, but it was huge in the sports supplement industry, after creatine had sort of blown up, and obviously protein was around, and, some pre-workouts had probably emerged by then. Tribulus was the OG test booster, really. And, as such, the claims back then, obviously laws have changed a lot and tightened up a lot, and I think even some integrity has sort of increased over the years. In specifically that space, which we're in. We have a supplement store, Newtown supplement store. That's what this channel is. But those claims really said things that tribulus can't do and doesn't do, and so it sort of gave it maybe a little bit of a stigma with some people. I mean, some people are still just getting introduced to the herb, to be honest. When I'm working in the store or talking to people online or in the DMs on our Instagram or whatever. It's not always the case that they've even heard of tribulus. It's a bit of an assumption, but anyone that's been into sports supplements for any period of time generally knows this herb and generally thinks it was overhyped and it didn't add slabs of lean muscle or, 225% increases in testosterone or whatever some of the claims would be. And it certainly doesn't do that. I mean, none of these really do that. I think the only herb that probably noticeably raises testosterone but above maybe your traditional healthy baseline, which is really what these herbs are trying to get you back up to, which I think is hugely valid. But the only one that might push you a little past it would be Tongat. But we'll talk about that later. It's actually not one of my preferred herbs. Which might be I don't know, a bit of a shock to some people, don't know. But with Huberman talking about it so much, that's Dr. Andrew Huberman, in case anyone doesn't know him. And some other people, it's kind of had a resurgence lately too, and it's a great herb. It does work. You definitely feel it, but for me, it actually makes me a little bit grumpy, a little bit cranky. And I always tell people that. And I don't want any test-boosting herbs that actually disturb my mood in the negative sense. So I only use that when I'm feeling really flat, like I really need to pick me up. And so I do always have it in the cupboard, but it's not a daily test booster that I ever run. And so as such, it's not necessarily one of the herbs that I'm going to put in the category of the herbs that changed my life or enhanced my life like some of these did. But tribulus is a great herb, and the reason I like it is that it's a libido enhancer and a mood enhancer. Over the years, trying different extracts, trying all kinds of brands, I sort of landed on about 1,000 milligrams of a given extract being a good rule of thumb. It's a pretty big dose. You can even do that twice a day. The common extract you'll see is usually a 45% saponins. This is what this has got in it. And it'll say something like fruit and aerial parts. I mean, that's a good basic place to start. That's one of the standard blends that probably comes out of China. And a lot of these herbs do come out of China, and that's not a bad thing. They're actually probably some of the most herbally informed people, the culture in the world. So there's no need whatsoever to sort of shy away from anything coming out of China. I mean, that's generally where you'll get these extracts, and some of the best ones do still come from there. Sometimes you'll see something like Bulgarian tribulus mentioned, and that's probably more just like the strain of the herb or plant, not so much specifically the location that it's being harvested from. So there's something just to bear in mind. There is a different extract that I notice Herbs of Gold use, and like I said, it's probably my favorite. It's essentially an Australian brand. Australian New Zealand brand. I don't know, it's like 51% owned by someone else and 49% owned Australian, something like that. But essentially, that has a protodioscin content. So not just saponins, but the protodioscin content which is in a way similar to saponins. Protodioscin, as it turns out, is another kind of cluster of plant extract that isn't, you still haven't narrowed down to a specific compound yet, like macamides in maca, or you can get tribusides and echinoceids, or what's it called again? Echinoceids. I don't know. You can get to an even sort of finer point than protodioscin content, but that one does mention the saponin and protodioscin content, and it's thought that the protodioscins where some of the major benefits from tribulus come from. But that has been one of the many things that's been explored with tribulus, and no one's really ever fully landed the plane. And, there's still really a good argument for whole herb anyway, because there's an entourage effect often with these things too. So just trying to extract one specific molecule or compound isn't always the be-all, end-all when you're working with herbs. Sometimes you want straight up 1-to-1 whole herb. Sometimes you want a 10-to-1, 100-to-1, or something like this where it's standardized to 45% saponins, which is bound to be full of goodies that are doing the thing that the herb is sort of known for, and in this case, libido boost. There's a few different studies on it. More than a few. Some things contradict and so on, but there seems to be a few things that tend to come up. One is that it might raise LH, which is luteinizing hormone, which then triggers your gonads to make a bit more testosterone. It might be true. There's some studies that showed it was potentially doing that. Others showed it was having hardly any effect on that. Then there were some other studies that came out later that I saw, and don't quote me on the exact specifics, but something to the effect of increasing receptor density for testosterone in the brain, so making you more sensitive to your own testosterone, therefore maybe increasing libido that way. Cool. It might have something to do with the mood as well. Fine. I noticed that. And then I guess lastly, there's been some other studies where it's liver protective and it's got some antioxidant properties and just an all-around adaptogen in a lot of ways, helping you deal with stress and so on. But that's the studies. My experience with it is it's a great herb, puts me in a great mood, definitely raises my libido. Now, libido isn't something that you can just take one of these sorts of herbs, one pill of them, and expect to notice an instant boost in your libido. And libido itself is not a straight line. We know that. There's a refractory period. You have to have a period of time where you're probably not indulging that for it to come back around. And it's kind of like a cycle, But what I find with something like tribulus is that cycle comes around a little bit quicker, whatever it is on a given day, week, month. And also when it comes back around, it comes with a bit more, depth to it, or a bit more, you're just a bit randier on a slightly deeper level, and it increases your enjoyment around that sort of thing. So I really like it for that reason, and I just feel like over the years I've never seen anything negative side effect wise about it, about what it's doing on your endocrinology, and I've certainly never experienced anything negative whatsoever, and I kind of like that it may even be good for organ health. So I'm a big fan. And I take that long to talk about tribulus just because, it does have that stigma about it. So I just want to kind of let you know that it's okay to like a herb, whether or not your friend said it's cool or not, Huberman said it's cool or not. If you try it, you like it, you get a consistent effect, maybe you've done a bit of research and you're happy with what you're seeing, then that might be the herb for you. If you don't want to be all amped up and feeling as alpha as you do on something like Tongat, then good. Tribulus won't do that. It just kind of makes you a nicer person, if anything. So, that's Tribulus terrestris. We could dive deeper into the science on it another time, and I can look into some studies and freshen myself up on that. But essentially, it's a herb I've used since I was in my teens. Years and years and years of use, and I sort of stand by it. So something to consider if some of that sounds like the kinds of things that you're looking for from a herb. It's just a herb that always really agreed with me. Alright, that said, let's have a look at something else that I also rate. Another herb that I really, really get into is Bulbine natalensis. Now, this can be hard to track down. This is the anatest extract. So this is from a place called Aphrodisiac over in South Africa. So they do a good, consistent Bulbine natalensis extract, and that's really cool. There's been others around over the years. There was like one called Prolensis. Essentially, you're just trying to make sure you're getting a good plant extract. And sometimes these trademark ones are a great way of knowing, oh, okay, I know that extract, I've had it before, and it seemed decent, cool. It's not to say some whole herb or some just other unnamed Bulbine isn't great. Take it and see, and then you may have a trusted brand on your hands that you can go back to. But this one's been pretty consistent for me, and I find about 400 milligrams a day to maybe 800, so there's like 1 to 2 pills generally to be the sweet spot. Seems to be a bell curve with Bulbine in some of the studies on the rats, where too much, the right amount, you get this boost in baseline testosterone kind of coming back up, and then you take too much and it sort of dips back down again. So you sort of want to start low and just find out where your sweet spot is with it. But fantastic herb. I think, again, no kind of mental disturbances of any kind, no anger, no aggression, nothing like that. Just feeling a bit more good, libido's up, feeling kind of healthy. But the thing I really like about it is you definitely notice an increase in the gonads, and that was shown in the studies with the rats as well. They had more cholesterol in their balls, and testosterone, as a lot of us know, is essentially made from cholesterol. That's where most of your hormones are made, from good old cholesterol, and that requires some fats. And it turns out that those are stored in the balls, essentially. And that's what Bulbine seems to increase. Also seems to increase LH, again, some studies suggesting it, some not quite clarifying it. Definitely seems to be triggering the gonads, though, to produce a bit more testosterone, which is a little different to something like Shilajit or fenugreek, which seem to be raising DHEA, which might mean it's helping with kidney health in that regard, where the adrenals tend to produce most of the DHEA in the body. But that said, so it seems to be working on the LH pathway. That's why it's a nice pairing with tribulus if you're, again, looking for libido, more so than any sort of aggression or energy boost. You just want to feel upbeat, happy mood, etc. The only thing with Bulbine, it looked like it was a little bit impacting the liver, a little bit of liver toxicity at extended use of larger doses in the rat studies. The lower doses seem to have less effect, but it kind of lends itself to cycling on and off, which I would still do with even the tribulus, just to keep your sensitivity to the herb. I would take probably 2 days off a week, or alternatively run it for 4 weeks, say, and then take a whole week off or 2, and then come back to the herb. So I think that's fine to do for both of them. I think with Bulbine, maybe every now and then take a month off. If you really fall in love with the herb like I did, you might want to keep running it 4 weeks on, 1 week off for quite a while. And then eventually, if there is any liver impacts and you might want to get some blood work done, then you might want to look at taking a good 4 weeks off or more to make sure you really give your body a rest. So there's something to think about as well. But I really like it. It's been a go-to for me for years. It's not as common as tribulus. You'll see tribulus everywhere. I mean, you can probably get it in a supermarket these days, just about. Whereas Bulbine, it's a bit more specialist. You're going to probably have to get it off us or off the internet, really. Even iHerb, I haven't seen it on there. So, as far as I know, though, still compliant as a novel food. But, I think in Australia you'd have to try to get it in powder if you wanted to get it registered and sort of get it widespread, which is why it's probably still quite niche. So, something to consider there. Really works for me. I think the last thing I'll say about Bulbine, it seems to generally increase load size quite a bit. Very noticeable when you sort of come off it and come on it. There just seems to be, so for fertility it may also be quite beneficial. There's no study I've found on that, nothing on sperm count or volume, but again, anecdotal use is often the best way to find out what herbs are best for you, and that certainly seems to be something that comes with Bulbine. Obviously, I recommend other things for that if that's a goal of yours. It's a noble goal. So soy lecithin or sunflower lecithin, any kind of lecithin, 1,200 milligrams or more per day, zinc, lysine, and celery juices are an old porn star trick apparently, but look, I don't know, it works. if you drink a couple of tall glasses of celery juice before, the deed, maybe 3 days, you need kind of 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. If you drank them all week, just look out. If you were trying to make a baby, I'm sure it would assist in that regard. That and a few good Kegels. Make sure you got some distance. Just get this bad boy going again. So that's the second herb that I love from a testosterone boosting perspective. And these are all ones, again, that don't disturb my mood, make me upset or grumpy, snappy, they just make you feel good. And just like your baseline's at its kind of best, which for me is important. For some people, that's not something they notice as much. They're not as affected by herbs like tonga. Butea superbra does it to me as well, the crankiness. And then I guess cystanch in super large doses can do that to me as well. Also deer antler if I overdo it. We'll talk about those another day. I do like deer antler and I want to go into that, but I use it sparingly so that it doesn't sort of max me out too much and I get that sort of cranky, impatient feeling, which is, indicative of, I don't want to say herb rage, but there's some herbs that can cause herb rage. It's not just a roid rage thing. Testosterone can have that effect. It can amplify feelings and tendencies that are already there, and that's not always something you want to do. And so the next one will be fenugreek. This is actually an old bottle. We've still got some of these left, but we probably won't have any more of those in this particular brand in the future. This is a brand I used to be involved in. We sourced a really nice fenugreek. This one's a bit pricier, but this has a protodioscin and fustanol or furostanol content standardization as in it, which seems to be probably one of the more potent ones I've ever used. But there's others out there that there's trademark fenugreeks as well, which are pretty reliable, but even a good whole herb might be effective. I prefer an extract with fenugreek. It's one of those ones where I don't feel whole herb is as effective. The jury's out for me on some other herbs. I think things like horny goatweed weirdly perform very well when they're whole herb, so it indicates, again, maybe an entourage effect or something that you kind of want in there from the whole herb. But in the case of fenugreek, it seems like you want a bit more potent extract, and that's probably because it is an aromatic herb. It's used in cooking. It is kind of curry-like in smell and flavor. It's quite nice. Helps balance out blood sugar, free up some bound tests from SHBG, and it seems in some studies as well to raise some DHEA production. So it's working on a nice, gentle cascade across multiple sort of pathways in the body. And I find a really nice effect from it. And again, no mood disturbance whatsoever. Just a really nice, steady increase. If you took that in nothing else and you waited a week, you do start waking up with a lot healthier morning wood, provided you're sleeping well. You're not excessively stressed, and there's other factors in play. Busting a nut every day. If you're just abstaining, run it for 2 weeks. Sure, you could argue that you're obviously just going to produce a good amount. Your prolactin's going to go down and you're going to have a healthy libido response if you waited that long. But with these, you'll see that enhanced when you do that. That's for sure. You can run these experiments yourself, essentially. And that's what I've been doing for the better part of probably 25 years, maybe more. So I definitely put that in the category of, a herb that definitely enhanced my life, and it's in my stack there. It's one of the big three that I'm taking so far. I'm going to go into a couple more things now, though. But they're my favorites. I would put horny goatweed in this category, but I'm going to save that for more of an erection-enhancing kind of video of some kind. Doesn't really seem to raise testosterone. There's some studies where it looks like it might a little bit, but doesn't seem to be its superpower as much as being a natural PDE5 inhibitor, which, again, you've got to take consistently to see the benefits. And from my experience, the whole herb, or the 20% icarin, both have their strong points. I think you can take a little less of the 20% icarin to get a similar effect, but if you've got a nice big bag of the whole herb and you can take large doses, probably the most potent sort of effect out of them if you can run it long enough and be patient enough to see if those effects are coming into play for you. But we'll park that one, and we'll sort of move on to just a few other things. I think the other thing that I put in my stack, I just generally can't live without some form of Shilajit in my stack. Now this goes well beyond just testosterone boosting, but we're going to mostly just focus on that today for today's video. But this does raise testosterone quite reliably in studies, so it's got some good studies on it. It's a pretty big industry, the Shilajit industry, and that's probably why you've seen it blowing up on TikTok lately and so on. There's enough probably money backing certain people at play to want to sort of generate some content, maybe pay for a little bit of content to get it out there, and that'll be at the production level, not so much any specific brand. And you got all the different specific brands trying to push their particular one as well. Hope everyone's okay with it. It's a little bit windy here, just out on my balcony, dropping this content. And this is really inspired by Jarrett, so this is a very different approach for me. But I'm just going to have fearless long form on the YouTube channel going forward, I think, and then use that as my base and just take out some great segments. We'll still do some specific product stuff and whatnot, and obviously I'll develop some reels and some bite-sized stuff, because I know not everyone can digest content this long, but I'm hoping everyone can come along for the ride with me that likes that sort of content. And if so, hopefully you're enjoying this and my Japanese cigar isn't too distracting. But yeah, Shilajit. From a test boosting perspective, so look, this brain health, mitochondrial health, there's a whole range of things that it looks like Shilajit really helps with, specifically because of the fulvic acid content, especially around the brain health side of things, where it straightens out TAU tangles, which again we'll talk about more in maybe a nootropic video. I'll do that, and I will include Shilajit in a nootropic video, interestingly. Obviously not necessarily the spearhead of your nootropic stack, but a very good complementary compound to have in there. But yeah, look, it seems to raise DHEA from the kidney production, which in turn has a cascade effect of increasing your testosterone. And the testosterone increases were reliably reproduced in studies at doses as low as 250 milligrams, which is a very small amount. I mean, particularly of the resin, which this is. I'm a fan of the resin. I'm a fan of the powder. I've felt all of them have an effect. The resin's like a sticky Coca-Cola sort of like black tar goop that you just kind of dunk a spoon in and stir it into your coffee or just a tea, just some hot water. Put that in with whatever you like, some herbs, I like this Jing blend from Superfeast, which has some cistanch, not too much, a little bit of cordyceps, and I'll usually blend that in with a bit of Shilajit. Maybe some pine pollen. That's, again, for another day. But yeah, so look, it's always in the stack, and I just think with the mitochondrial benefits and the fact that, for me, it's really an anti-fatigue reason that I have this in my stack. I like to get my energy levels as steady as possible so that I have the energy to do all the things I need to do. We run a business. I've got a full-time job at the moment. We used to have a couple of locations. Things got a little bit difficult after interest rates went up, and we had some issues with the TGA even back in the day. So we sort of scaled it back for a bit, but it still is certainly our passion. And so energy levels are just so important. So Shilajit's always in my stack, and it's part of my energy boosting kind of regime, but also it's for the test boosting benefits, which is something that, it's always been a bit of a focus for me. I like to have a good, healthy libido and testosterone level. It's a little hobby of mine. Now, a couple other things that I'm just going to put in there. So that's kind of my ideal stack so far, as just a base test boosting stack. And these are just, like I said, herbs that have enhanced my life. But these days I also add in some D3. I've got some D3K2 here, help with the bone health, something that also deer antler can probably help with. And some boron, same reason, bone health. Bone health is interestingly often linked to healthy testosterone, but also vitamin D3 helps make testosterone at the very sort of root, so it's something you want to make sure you're getting. And then good old zinc. Often like an all-in-one test booster will have the zinc as well, so bases covered. But I like to have it in like a dose I can control. I like a pretty good dose of zinc. You can overdose zinc. It can be problematic if you do, but you'd have to go pretty hard. I look for about 50 milligrams a day, and I don't mind if it drifts up to maybe 60, but that's something just to be aware of. You don't necessarily want 200 milligrams of zinc a day. There can be some negative side effects from that. But low zinc will definitely be a bottleneck for your natural testosterone production. So like get it in there, unless you're eating oysters every friggin' day, which most of us aren't. It's a pretty good chance that you're low in zinc. So put that in the stack, put the D3, and look, the K2 may as well go with the D3 to help with the bone health and get sort of the best out of your vitamin D. So that's kind of where I'm at lately. Obviously you can stack that. That's got 1,000 milligrams of D3 with the K2. The K2 is at an effective dose. D3, you could probably go 5,000 IU. Did I say 1,000 milligrams? Probably. I meant 1,000 IU. So really, you could add a little bit of vitamin D on top of that, or if you're test boosting, you got an all-in-one type test booster that's like a stack, it's got some vitamin D with it, then you could stack it with that one. It should get you at a healthy level. Unless you're like a roof tiler or someone that's out in the sun all day. Most of us are inside, in an office, in artificial lighting these days. So, it's a good idea to make sure you're topping up the vitamin D, because that could be a root cause for some lower testosterone levels just right off the bat. So I get that in there as well. And that effectively has been my stack for many years now, my base go-to cluster of herbs that I'll always come back to anyway. Like I said, I'm always trying something different. Spilanthes, pyrethrum, Anacyclus pyrethrum, could be pronouncing some of these wrong, megadosing pine pollen, tongat, fedosia, you name it. It's ridiculous. There's a new kind of product out that's kind of like a pomegranate extract. I think it's not Uri Gold, but anyway, I'll remember it later. Essentially another kind of patented testosterone blend, and I've been running that from Life Extension just to try it out. Yeah, it's not bad. You can feel it in the background a little bit. I mean, the list just goes on. D-aspartic acid. I don't mind D-aspartic acid. Just hasn't been an absolute staple of mine where I've always noticed it every time, but it's something I want to experiment with more. Megadosing pine pollen, yeah, look, I think fills in some nutritional gaps. I think there's something to it. Seems to somehow improve orgasm quality, if that makes sense. Swedish flower pollen being more akin to doing that, and that's again a story for another day, maybe more like a load increase video if that's something people want to talk about. Certainly does give you more contractions as a man. Might even for women, we don't know. I haven't, it's generally thought of as a prostate supplement, the Swedish pine flower pollen, not to be confused with pine pollen. It's a different thing. They're both pollen. And then similar to bee pollen, it's another pollen product. It fills a bunch of nutritional gaps in, but does it do the thing that TikTokers are saying and make women's breast size larger? I don't know. Fenugreek has some evidence for that though, believe it or not. So if you're a woman, this is a great herb to help balance your hormones. Helps with milk production. It's very common. So for pregnant or lactating women, this herb's often prescribed in the Ayurvedic tradition to help produce more milk to keep up. And it also does seem to increase breast size in some anecdotal circles, and I think there's even been a study on it. I haven't looked into it too much, but something to try if someone's interested in trying that. And apparently bee pollen's supposed to help with that. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. But these are really just some herbs that are really near and dear to me, that I just think could be talked about a little more. I just wanted to share my perspective on them and how they've helped me and enhanced my life over the years. I've really enjoyed them. I like the way I feel on them. I like the effects they have for me, and dare I say, in the bedroom. So, hopefully that's helpful. That's just a little insight into the world of test boosters and a really nice kind of cluster of herbs that I enjoy, and some vitamins and minerals that you can stack in as well for the goal of healthy testosterone production. And like I said, boron is one I'd throw in there as well, up to like a 10 milligram sort of dose, being probably ideal, just to free up any bound testosterone, and it's great for bone density as well. So once again, there's a little parallel there, that and to a degree the deer antler that I've touched on. And as I said, I bring in the deer antler from time to time to really boost up. And then my last resort is Tongat if I'm really feeling absolutely just flat, very beta. If I need that aggro to sort of fight back in life in some way, then I'll bring it in. But it's rarely the case that I sort of find myself wanting to do that, especially in recent times. There's enough stress as it is. I don't need to be an over-amplified alpha male on top of it, overreacting to things, when really keeping a cool head is often the best way through life's twists and turns. So that's sort of where I sit with the Tonga. But if it was a sport, coming from a sport perspective, if I was a MMA fighter, boxer, Muay Thai guys use Tonga already for this purpose, I'd probably take it. If I needed that Jekyll switch to be as hair trigger as possible to get me in that kind of mindset I need to be to go to war, then I'd be taking Tonga. That's for sure. But it's surprising how often that's not really the best approach in life outside of some of those very specific situations, in my experience anyway. So look, hopefully that's helpful. If anyone's got any questions, reach out, comment below, DM on our Instagram. It's Newtown Supplement Store, all one word. We're going to put this on TikTok as well in some little shorts, and put it also on YouTube shorts. So I'm going to divvy it up, and so you might be seeing this in one of those formats, but if you watch the long form, then go over and follow our Instagram if you want to talk to me directly. I'm always happy to talk about supplements. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Oftentimes I'm right there already, looking into something, researching something, or making some content about something. So that's kind of what I do in my spare time. I really hope that some of these herbs can do for you what they've done for me over the years. I don't mind where you source them from. If you want to support our store, great. But I honestly just feel like they have helped me with things that I really enjoy, and they've helped my self-esteem over the years, and my enjoyment of I guess things in the bedroom and so on, so much so that I kind of just want to share them with people so that they can get that too, and I don't think that's anything to shy away from. I think it's really cool. I love that part of herbalism. I love what herbs can do. So look, I'll leave it at that. This 37-minute video. We will go into some more erection boosting, and maybe some more severe and intense herbs on some other videos. So that'll be more the Butea superba, the Tongat, the deer antler. Again, all sort of natural testosterone boosters, and in the erection boosters, the arginine, the horny goat weed, pomegranate to a degree, and a few other things that I think definitely can have an effect, So we'll get into that down the track. But until then, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you got something out of this. And if you want to reach out to me and talk about any of this in more detail, please do so. I'd love to speak to you guys. All right. Big love.